Hi everyone and welcome to Pro Tools Answers, where three Pro Tools experts argue, demonstrate and elaborate on your Pro Tools questions put to the community in Avid's official Facebook support forum. Please welcome...
Did you say argue?
I did. We'll get there in a minute. Please welcome Anders.
Hi.
And say hi to Andy.
How you doing?
And I'm Dave, and we take you into the workings of Pro Tools and ethos to help the user community better understand our favorite DAW. In this week's question, we're going to take a look at a question from... in this week's episode, we're going to take a look at a question from Scott, who asks, does anyone know of a Pro Tools compatible plugin that will EQ a music track to let the voiceover through nicely? Am I dreaming, or does such a thing exist? And so initially we jumped onto the subject of ducking and sidechain compression and stuff like that. Although Anders reckons he has a much more sensible solution than Scott's suggestion of using an automatic thing.
Is this the arguing thing?
This is the arguing part, right?
Never.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, when I mix dialogue and music, which I do from time to time, I always ride the faders manually. I'll duck for the dialogue. I start off by first doing the dialogue first. I'm careful, depending on how much time I have and what it should sound like. But I use dynamic clip gain a lot. And then I ride the dialogue as well, and then I do the music to that. That's my usual approach. But, of course, it takes time to do that. But I have full control.
I won't argue with that.
No, please.
That it's the best way to do it. That it's the best way to do it, but let's be honest, sometimes you don't have the time.
It's time consuming.
Of course, yeah.
There's two... more automated ways that you can do it. Now, in the question, he said EQ. And there's one of my favorite EQs is FabFilter. And one of the cool things you can do with FabFilter is you can have a key input that pushes down or boosts up or automates a band, right? So if you wanted to duck using EQ, which is something honestly I don't do that often. I'll duck amplitude levels, but I won't typically duck EQ. But you can do it, and one of the ways you can do it is with FabFilter. And so you would have the dialogue, outputting, and that would feed the key input to the FabFilter. I will do that for things like drums and bass and stuff like that internally, but not so much for dialogue.
We're talking dynamic EQs here, aren't we? So...
but basically, it's dynamic EQing, but from a different source than the track that it's on.
Yes,
it's taking a key input from the dialogue track, and then applying it to the music track. So you've got the FabFilter on the music track, so you're having an external key input controlling that band. Yeah. It's one of the things that, FabFilters, I'm sure not the only one, it's just the one that I use. And usually, typically, the traditional way to do that is to make room for the bass and the drums so that they can occupy that same space. More often, though, what I'll do instead of EQ is I'll use a compressor to attenuate the entire music down to respond to the dialogue, and the dialogue then will be a key input that is feeding the side chain of a compressor that is on the music track. Okay. It is, and I say this, and I completely agree with what Anders says, is that's not the high quality way to do it, but when you don't have the time, it is a way to do it. There's a problem, though, is that compressors are reactive, and it takes some time to get it to react. And so what people will do then is they'll take the attack time and they'll make it super, super short, right, thinking that they're getting the fastest performance, and they are, but the problem is it makes that compressor the most apparent. Right, you can just hear it, just bring that music down, and it just pops, and it's not that pleasant. So
yeah, no, Sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
Andy.
No, please.
No, go. You go.
No, you. This is the argument part, right?
This is exactly what I was talking about.
Sorry, I jumped into quickly. Andy, go ahead.
So for me, what I like it to ease in a little bit, and I want to make my attack time a little bit longer. The problem is with that is then if you're using the key input, then now the compressor's so slow that you don't hear the first parts of the spoken word. How do you fix it? It's not my idea, but it's an idea a lot of folks have used. And what I do is I take my dialogue track that's edited and finished, I duplicate it, and the output of that duplicated audio track goes to the key input for the compressor. Mm-hmm. Then what I do is I shift that track, that second dialogue track, I shift it earlier by a little bit, and usually I'll use nudge to do this because there'll be a sweet spot that I'll hear, and basically it's earlier than the dialogue track that you do hear, which basically triggers the compressor a little bit earlier, giving it a chance to ease in, and it's not terrible. It really isn't. You can get it to do pretty good stuff depending upon the content. And again, I would never do this on something like a feature film. Mm-hmm. But when you don't have the time, you want to use a technique that's automated and maybe squeeze out a little bit extra quality. Try it out.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic workaround. I've heard about this before, and I've tried it out myself as well. And you need to set a little bit of release time so that you give the extra time in the end, of course. And usually you want the music to ease in after dialogue anyway, so you can have that release pretty long. And what Andy's talking about is like us music producers, I call myself music, but I do a lot of post. We often think that we don't have time for things, but in a post-production environment, you basically can get a program that is supposed to be broadcast in 10 minutes, and it's 45 minutes long, and you need to do the ducking. So how do you do it? Andy's method, and then just offline render it. I mean, if you don't have a time, this is the perfect solution to get it done, and it will work.
So are we able to show setting up a key input for that kind of thing? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Good insight.
That's right.
The setting.
And the
code.
last
but
thing that you did, Andy, was to nudge all of the clips on this duplicate track so they are ahead of the actual timing, so that your compressor will actually start ducking.
That's right.
And
It's almost like a look ahead.
So
It's acting
yeah,
like a
it's
look
almost
ahead.
like a look ahead. So that might be maybe 2 frames or something like that, depending on how you're working. And you obviously need to listen to this and use your ears. Can't play it back because of copyright reasons, but this is the process of creating this.
Can you just open up the Dynamics 3 plugin again?
Yeah,
Just
sure.
for me, because not every compressor has a key input. That's one thing. So there's only certain ones that do. Are there certain types of compressors that you go for with ducking? Because I prefer to use compressors that are completely transparent, because I don't want any of the character of that compressor being imparted onto my signal.
Absolutely.
Because it's just there.
DIN 3
all
is
it's
your
there for
is your
just-
compressor.
Sorry, Dynamics 3.
DIN 3 is a great alternative then. Yeah.
So Pro Compressor is my go-to.
It's also a good one, yeah. I mean, we use compressors for a lot of different things, right? And we misuse compressors a lot of times as well. But a lot of time we'll use it to fatten up drums and things like this. That's we're not trying to fatten up anything. We're just using this as a proxy for a volume knob.
It's a control
That's it,
feature.
right? That's
Yeah.
it's
So-
just attenuated.
Exactly.
So Anders, can you open up Pro Multiband for me?
Yeah, sure.
Largely because I just want to have a look at something. Because if you wanted to bring the vocal through, we were talking about dynamic EQ, where we can just use like the most prominent parts of the voice through. So it's around about 2.5K for men. You can duck just 2.5K broadly to let the voice have a little bit more clarity against the music, right? Could we do the same thing with a multiband compressor?
You sure can. So you'll see here in each one of the bands that you have a side chain. So there's at the bottom you see the different 4 bands, right? And you'll see that at the bottom you have side chain enables for each individual band. And this basically does the same kind of thing that I use Fab Filter for, right? So that's same kind of thing with maybe slightly larger bands, right? But yeah, you can do the same thing.
Awesome. Because I wasn't
So
sure if,
what you would do
multiband had the side chaining on the filters.
It does. Now what you
All
would
the
do
bands,
then is you would disable side chaining for all the bands except for the one that you wanted to push down.
Which would it's going to be the middle one, and
There you
then
go.
you'd adjust
Yep.
the bandwidth to be a lot narrower than you probably have it there.
Yeah.
And again, use your ears, but again, you'd still probably want to have you'd want to use that ghost track because no compressor is going to be able to react fast enough, and you want it to ease in. Or at least I usually do.
So it's great that multiband can do it, but let's have a quick look how we can do it with a dynamic EQ. So on my my bass track here, I can only look at this in the context of music, so you'll have to forgive me. I've got Waves F6, which is a really nice, very cost-effective dynamic EQ. So if I set up a control send from my kick drum track, because typically we'd use kick drums to sidechain to bass to get the bass out of the way of the kick drum. Where's my SC1 gone? There it is, sidechain 1. So the control signal being sent from kick in track, mind you, I could put it on the kick bus, I suppose, and then that's sending the signal over to the F6 here. But rather than triggering we want to trigger a specific band, which is this one here. So I can set the sidechain source to either be the internal compressor, the internal sidechain, or set it to the external sidechain. And now with the sidechain source selected as my kick drum, the kick drum is now going to be triggering that specific band. Can you imagine? Although I've got to set it up in a way to actually allow the compression. Let's try doing that.
And just to be clear, external sidechain is the same as a key input. That's two terms for the same thing.
Yes. see that band reacting to a kick drum strike. It's
Right.
it's nice and easy to set up. Turns out it wasn't as easy in Pro Q3, was it, Andy?
Nope, not as easy.
But I really rate the CQ. Waves F6.
It's a good one.
Really nice way of being able to do sidechain compression. So, Scott's question, we've kind of given you 4 suggestions, right?
But I would say this for dialogue. I mean, for what you're doing, Dave, completely an EQ to duck a frequency to make room for another signal, completely. But if you're doing dialogue, and he said dialogue, not vocals, which is a difference
correct,
to me.
yes.
Dialogue says this is spoken word. Spoken word always takes precedence over anything else.
Well, do you know what?
And so I don't know if I would use EQ. I would probably use a compressor.
Do you know what he actually said was to make the vocals clearer? Is there an EQ
did
to
he
make
say
the vocals clearer? So that's what had me initially
Maybe then.
thinking about sidechaining, and specifically with dynamic EQ, because if you can duck the frequency area that the voice is most prominent, that's what I was trying to say earlier on, without ducking the entire track underneath it, would that help?
I think it depends on the context. If by vocals he means a sung vocal in a song, that's a different thing than a spoken vocal over a soundtrack.
Yeah, because I don't do the kind of stuff that Anders does. So maybe it's a question for Anders. Would you do that kind of thing on a thing? And the answer is probably no.
No, I wouldn't do the thing on the thing at all. I would manually ride all of the levels.
Because
if I
Anders is
have
a
the time.
rider.
He's a writer.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's we've talked about how to do how to use key inputs on a number of different things and what to look for and how to set up the workflow. However you use it, these tools are there for a multitude of different scenarios. As I said, we talked about 4 different ways of being able to duck a sound effect track or a music track underneath a vocal. So however you choose to use it is entirely down to you. All we can do is show you how it works, right?
There's 10 different ways to do almost anything in a DAW.
Indeed. So I hope you got something out of that. If you did, hit like on our video. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that as well. You can hit the bell icon that will notify you every time we release new videos. You can head over to protoolsanswers.com. You can subscribe over there. Well, Andy will send you periodic emails to let you know what we're up to. And if you fancy taking that next step to support our work at Pro Tools Answers, then you can subscribe to our own Inner Circle, which has some benefits such as monthly masterclasses and access to our or inclusion rather in our Pro Tools Answers Discord community. And all leaves me to say is thank you very much to Anders.
Thank
you
Dave.
to Andy.
You betcha.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. We will see you on the next one. My name's Dave. This is Pro Tools Answers, and we're out.